This video is going over how to add and subtract integers. Integers include both positive and negative numbers. Take a moment and write positive and negative on your notes. The first strategy we are going to be using is the number line, because the number line helps visualize your answer. When using a number line, the first number indicates where you start on the number line. As you can see in the first example, the first number in the problem is -5. So we put a dot on -5. That's where we are going to start. Then we are going to look at our symbol. In this problem, our symbol is a plus, meaning we are going to move in a positive direction. If you think it will help you, label the left side of the number line as the negative side and the right side of the number line the positive side. If there's a plus, you are always going to be moving towards the right side or the positive side of your number line. Lastly, we're going to look at our second number in our question, and that tells us how many jumps we are going to move on our number line. Since the number is a 6, we are going to jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and that will be our final answer. Based on where we landed, the answer is 1, or more specifically, a positive 1. Let's take a moment and look at the next example. It says -4 plus 8. Just like in the last question, the first number tells us where to start. So I'm going to place my first dot on -4. Take a moment to number your number line if you haven't already. As long as there is a -4 on this side and several numbers on the positive side, you should be good to go for this problem. Next, we're going to look at our symbol. The symbol again is a plus, which means we are going to be going in a right-hand direction. Lastly, we look at our second number, and it's an 8, which tells me we are going to be jumping 8 times from where we started. So I'm going to go ahead and count my jumps. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's where I end. So that tells me my final answer is 4, or more specifically, +4. Let's take a look at our next example. Go ahead and number your number line. Again, I would recommend starting at -7 on the negative side of your number line, since that is our first number, and I know that's where we are going to start. I went ahead and added our color code for the other two parts of our question. The plus, meaning we are again going to be going towards the right-hand side, and the 10 being the number of jumps we are going to do. Take a moment to try this on your own, and then resume watching the video. Take a moment to look at the correct answer and compare what you did to the correct answer. You should have started at -7 and then jumped 10 times on your number line to land on the +3. Let's take a look at our next example. There are 4 more examples on this page. I'm going to go over one more, and then the last 3 are for you to try on your own. Taking a look at this question, it looks like we are going to start with -1. So when I begin to number my number line, I'm going to make sure that -1 is on my number line. Now I have numbered my number line and used the same color code to break down this question. The first number is a -1, so I'm going to place a dot to start at -1. It has a plus, which means we are again going to be moving to the right-hand side in a positive direction. And the second number is a 5, which tells me I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps to find my answer. That means 4, or +4, is going to be my answer for this question. Go ahead and try the last 3 and pause this video. We will resume the video once we're done with these 3 questions to go over the correct answers. Let's take a moment and look at the answers for the last 3 questions on this page of notes. The first question says -3 plus 7. We would start at -3, move in a positive direction, and jump 7 times on the number line to land on 4, or +4. The next question is, I think, the hardest on the page, because it says to start at 0, it tells you to move in a positive direction, but then it says a -3. To help myself, I rewrote this equation to say 0 minus 3 because plus a negative is really the same as taking away a number. So I switched it to say 0 minus 3 to help my brain know I was going to the left direction or the negative direction on my number line. So I started at 0. I moved in a negative direction 3 times. So I did 3 jumps and landed on negative 3. Lastly, this question says negative 2 plus 9. Your first dot is at negative 2. You're moving in a positive direction 9 times. And after 9 jumps, I landed on 7 or positive 7 as my final answer. Go ahead and flip over your notes to the back side of this page so we can continue on to the next page of notes. Just like on the front of our notes, we are still talking about adding and subtracting integers. However, we are going to use a visual strategy and a T-chart strategy on the back to see if one of those strategies is more helpful for you as you're trying to solve these problems on your own. Again, integers are our positive and negative numbers. Our helpful hint for this side of notes is to identify which number is biggest when you start. Your answer will always have the same sign as the bigger number at the end. Let's take a look at the first example. It says negative 5 plus 8. Between 5 and 8, 8 is bigger, so the answer we already know is going to be positive. When I take a look at the visual strategy, there are 5 negative signs and 8 positive signs because there is a negative 5, so this is our 5 negatives, and there is a positive 8, and these are our 8 positives. A negative and a positive 1 cancel each other out, so for each of these, they all cancel each other out and go away, so that all that is left are these 3 positives, which tells me my answer is going to be positive 3. The T-chart is another strategy that's very similar, but for some people, the 2 columns and thinking of it as more of a score that you're trying to see which team wins is helpful for some people. In our problem, we have a negative 5, so there are 5 dots on the negative side of our T-chart. There is a positive 8 in our problem, so there are 8 dots on the positive side of our T-chart. When we again cross off a positive 1 and a negative 1 that cancel each other out, there are only 3 dots left, and they are on the positive side, which is how I know my answer is positive 3. Let's take a minute to set up our T-chart and our visual strategy for the second problem. All right. Our problem, the first thing I looked at is which number is bigger, 9 or 7. Since the 9 is bigger, that tells me my answer is going to be negative, so I went ahead and wrote a negative over here in the answer box. I also went ahead and drew 9 negative symbols under the visual strategy and 7 pluses under the visual strategy for my positive 7. On my T-chart, there are 7 dots under the plus sign and 9 dots under the negative sign. So now I'm going to grab a different color marker. Let's go purple. And I'm going to cross off anything that cancels each other out. So a positive and a negative, a positive and a negative. Every time there's one positive and one negative that can be buddies, they cancel each other out, and we'll see whatever's left. I'm going to do the same thing on my T-chart. All these, 1 dot on the positive, 1 dot on the negative, they cancel each other out. So all that is left are 2 negatives for our visual and 2 dots under the negative side of our T-chart. So my answer is negative 2. Let's take a moment to set up the next problem. The first thing I looked at is whether the 4 or the 1 is bigger. The 4 is a bigger number, so the answer must be negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put a negative in the answer box. First, I'm going to set up my visual strategy. The first number is a negative 4, so I'm going to draw 4 negatives. And then there's a positive 1, so I'm going to put a positive. Next, I'm going to set up my T-chart. I have a positive side and a negative side. My negative 4 means I'm going to put 4 dots on the negative side. And then my positive 1 means I'm going to put 1 dot on the positive side. Again, I'm going to grab a different color so that I can cross off any numbers that will cancel out to see what is left over. When I look, both of them show there are 3 left over and they are negatives or on the negative side of my T-chart, so my answer is negative 3. There are only 2 more examples on this note page. I would like you to try them on your own. Resume this video when you are ready to check your answers. Good luck! Your problems should look something like this when you're all done. For the first problem, 5 plus negative 6, 6 is bigger than 5, so the answer has to be negative. I drew 5 plus signs and 6 negative signs. When they canceled each other out, there was only one negative remaining for an answer of -1. The same thing happened with my t-chart. I had 5 dots on the positive side and 6 dots on the negative side. All of them crossed out except for 1 dot left on the negative side for an answer of -1. The bottom problem says 3 plus -11. 11 is bigger, so I know my answer will be negative. I have my 3 plus signs and my 3 dots on the positive side of my t-chart, and I have 11 negative signs and 11 dots on the negative side of my t-chart. When I crossed off the 3 that cancel each other out, there were 8 left, 8 negatives and 8 dots on the negative side of my t-chart for an answer of -8. Hopefully this video helped you understand better how to add and subtract integers. Best of luck!